Welcome back to Game Design, everybody. Now, you already know how to use Piskel, and you already know how to animate. So I'm not going to be going over everything in detail here today, but I am going to give you some pointers, tips and tricks, and just a push in the right direction for starting your project. So one of the first things that we know we need is we need to create, design, and animate a speaker of some kind to play the music that's going to be in our scene. Now, never be afraid to use reference. I wanted to have something to look at to inspire me as I start to create my speaker. I tried Googling things like cool speakers and awesome boom boxes, very technical terms like that. And I stumbled upon this one. Looks like something pretty old school, but, I was born in the 80s, so this still looks cool to me. So I'm not going to be able to recreate this exactly, and I don't really want to recreate it exactly. I'm just using this as a starting place, as a point of reference, to create a pixel art speaker that I'm going to have fun animating in my scene. So as I get started here, you'll see that I use the rectangle tool to start with the front, and now I'm using the mirror tool to draw the rest of the sides symmetrically without having to do everything twice. I'll make a few mistakes here and there. I'll go back and erase a couple pixels where I don't like them. Oh, and by the way, I did make my image about 3 times as large as the starting size before I even started drawing. But keep in mind, you can actually change the scale of your image at any time without really needing to do any extra work. Next, I'm going to work on some of the details inside of the main shape. So I'll start by creating the tape decks down at the bottom. I simply use the rectangle tool to create one of them, and then I use my selection tool and a copy and a paste to create the second. So that way I don't have to paint it exactly right twice. I just make one that I like and copy it and paste it where I want it. Then I'll block out some big areas, pick a color for the main body, use the bucket fill to fill that in really quick, pick some colors for the other areas, and start to just fill things in. Now, as I continue, I'm starting to think about what I'm going to be animating. So I'm starting to create some sliders, some knobs, and some areas that I want to fill with flashing lights and things like that. Next, I realized that I actually need to add the speakers themselves onto the sides here. So I'm going to use my circle tool, and I'm going to create some circles that represent the speakers. Now, honestly, I get a little bit carried away here. I start to add some color for the areas that I want to animate, like for the sliders and lights. But if I was planning further ahead, I should have started creating these on a new layer, which I'm going to do eventually, but really what I ended up doing was doing the work twice. So when you start to paint something that you know is going to be moving a lot, depending on how your animation is designed, you may want to do some of it on a new layer. We'll look at that in just a minute. But here you see I add the colors and start to get an idea for how this will look when it's all finished. Then I also use the dithering tool, which is a nice way to finish off the speakers and make them look like they have a bit of a texture without having to paint one pixel at a time. So now what I've done is create a new layer by clicking on this icon right here. On this new layer, I can paint things that I can easily erase and move around without affecting the paint that happened on my first layer. So I already have the colors picked out from my first frame, and on this new frame I've created another layer and I'm going to paint this again. So really again, I'm doing my work twice, and if I were thinking ahead, I didn't have to do it this way, but this doesn't take too long and it'll be much easier to animate moving forward, so it's worth the time. So I'm just placing all of my sliders and light bars where I want them to start off at the very first frame of the animation. With my colors placed, I'm going to start animating by duplicating frames and then moving the red slider up a little bit by erasing the old placement and painting it again higher up. And I'll also be raising the red color bar up by a pixel each time. If I was going to really finish this example, I would be doing this with each color along the way, but I want to keep the tutorial quick, so I'll just do one slider and one color bar as an example. Now I also set aside a little bit of space over here to create a knob or a dial that can be turned. It can be a little bit difficult to animate something round in pixel art and show that it's turning, so I need to give it something constant, like a dot or a line or a mark of some kind that can be rotated around. So I'm just creating this little purple dot, and I'll be moving this back and forth a little bit so that it could look like the knob or the dial is turning and spinning as the music plays. Now, some of the movement from our pixel art is going to come in Snap, when we can move this, rotate it, and make it move around a little bit after the animation is done. But there's still one more thing that I want to do to make this boombox look like it's really pumping out some music. So I'm going to use my circle tool and I'm going to create some circles that kind of emanate out of at least the biggest speakers down here at the bottom. Again, if I was really finishing this, I'd probably do an effect like this on the smaller speakers up at the top too, but for the sake of time, I'll just do the big ones down at the bottom. And even here, I have a little bit of trial and error to feel out exactly how I want these to look, but after a little bit, I come up with the size of the rings that I want and how I want them to grow with each frame, and it turns out looking pretty good, I think. Now don't forget to save your work occasionally as you're going through this process. I've been saving frequently myself, and you should be doing the same. Be sure to tune in for the next video where we'll learn how to export this from Piskel and bring it into Snap and get it animated with our code. Until then, good luck and have fun.